morning. Welcome back to the broadcast. You're watching New Day Kenya. 0791478990 is the number. The hashtag on Twitter is New Day KE. The short SMS code is 40920. Before we get to the political pages of the newspapers and get the accounts of my able panel here on set, let's talk matters corruption and the war on graft in Kenya. So we have this mapping as done by Transparency International, and it's coming up shortly on your screens. You can see how it is looking like, and this is as captured by the 2019 Corruption Perception Index, and as of course displayed on your screens by Transparency International, which ranks countries across the world, as you can see, and shaded in different colors. And this is as part of the seeking of proper governance as to the management of the administrations that are different in terms of jurisdictions across the world. And Kenya is ranked among countries that are highly corrupt. And in most case scenarios, as you can see in the mapping, the countries that are shaded as the most corrupt are either failed state or countries that have no proper leadership. Look at Libya, look at Sudan, look at South Sudan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Central African Republic, Mexico, and some countries in the Latin American part of the world, whilst Canada, some Scandinavian countries, and the United Kingdom, France, and Germany among the countries that are also ranked as one of the most transparent countries alongside Australia, while the United States of America and its peers are also most transparent in terms of their governance. And Russia, some African countries, including Algeria, Morocco, Senegal, Mauritania, are also among the countries that are highly corrupt alongside Kenya. And this is, of course, owing to the administration as part of how governance issues are undertaken globally. Victor Marende, good morning. Thank you. Your time is appreciated. I am glad to have you here on board this Wednesday morning. Wakili Philip Mwangale at the center is an advocate of the High Court. He's also a political social commentator. And Cyrus, who has been away for some time, is here with us. Cyrus, good morning.
Good morning.
And I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Oh, you have been mic'd. I was worried. And a lot to talk about, including the political developments in the country. But it is the World Anti-Corruption Day. And Victor, I'm coming to you on this because this is a thorn in our flesh as a society and as a country. Looking at what has transpired ever since 1963 to the defunct Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission formed in 1987, it wasn't operational until 1997, 10 years later, and the appointing authority had made appointments that were not suitable until the High Court had quashed President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi's appointment of Harun Mwau. Is it a case of a troubled past and us having difficulty in terms of prosecuting corruption cases in the country?
Good morning and good morning to our viewers. Now, if it were my thought, I would allow Philip to have spoken first.
and I chose you.
But then, because I'm here, now I would say something. The history of corruption in this country is dotted. And it is dotted for very few reasons. One is that whenever we want to fight corruption, then we turn it political. So then the war on corruption becomes a political issue rather than an administrative issue.
Okay.
Now, it touches on most of our politicians to the effect that when I'm in political party A and political party B is in power, then if I'm having a corruption case, then I would be thinking and I would be telling my supporters that I'm being fought politically and that I have not stolen any money. So the first hindrance to corruption in this country since independence is its thought and its intertwinement with politics. Now, the second most problem is political appointments to the offices that are charged with fighting corruption.
Okay.
Now, the case you just mentioned about Aaron Mwau. Now, the appointment of Aaron Mwau was more political than his academic qualifications to be there. Now, the only appointment that has stood to have been one of the best was the one for Patrice Lumumba.
It was taken out by Parliament.
But then Lumumba was fought because now he was fighting the real dragon in the war, and that was the main guys involved in corruption cases. Now, presently, we also have an EACC that I doubt if it knows its exact roles as pertains fighting corruption. Now, there is the argument right now being brought forward that they are also fighting corruption politically. Mm-hmm. Now, to some extent, you would agree with those who are saying that. Now, to a larger extent, you will also say, we really have to fight corruption and fight it to the very end. But then look at the history of presidents in this country too. Mm-hmm. Now, Kibaki in his last term, and specifically spilling over to almost the end of this first term, there was a targeted fight on corruption in his government. Mm-hmm. And cabinet ministers, I remember, I think it's on October 6th of 2006, where 2 cabinet ministers and about 30 of their staff were held to court to answer to charges against corruption. And he was talking as if, Kibaki spoke as if he's going to fight corruption and it's going to end. Then came his second term, a legacy that he wanted to achieve. Mm-hmm. Now we have the current president trying to achieve a legacy in the fight against corruption. Kenyatta 1 did it. Now,
Can Kenyatta do?
That is why I think it's a political tool.
Okay, so even from the onset where he said in the county of Mombasa in 2018 that it will start with me, a lifestyle audit, then my deputy who is here, then Governor Joho, and to other state officials. So was it, is that practical?
Ayub, here and now, I believe that the fight against corruption in this country is very cosmetic.
Okay, I'll come. You have mentioned President Mwai Kibaki, you have mentioned President Uhuru Kenyatta, and I'll be citing a World Bank report that had detailed all that transpired between 1990 and 2010. And the report is titled The State Capture of Kenya. Wakili Philip Mwangale, and that was after the High Court had said there was an illegality in the appointment of Harun Mwau as the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission boss by President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi in 1997. And then the Kibaki government, after 2002 elections, enacted the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, which re-established the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission in April 2004. You have President Kenyatta now in the midst of fighting these corruption scandals, and it continues to dot his administration. Is it a case of perhaps a hoodoo that continues to haunt successive administrations in this country?
I totally agree with Victor that we have a political problem. While the whole country might rally around anti-corruption, there are people who have very deep interests, including the people that we depend on to make such declarations as that the fight against corruption should take a national outlook. And I'm talking about people at the higher echelons of government. They have very deep-seated interests, such that the fight against corruption will actually be fighting themselves. And I do not think they have the energy to cut off their hands. You have made mention to the Transparency International indices. And these indices over time just capture the perception by business people, by analysts. But the reality on the ground is very grim. And that is the picture I want to paint for Kenyans today, that where we are in terms of corruption does not even begin to hit that index by Transparency International. We are at a very bad place because, one, unlike in the past where you had a few scrupulous individuals engaging in corruption, right now our corruption is systemized. In places where we should call a bribe, we call it facilitation in our institutions. It has become that bad. You know, if you walk around town today and ask Kenyans in Nairobi town here, how many people have given a bribe to the police within the last 1 week, you'll be surprised that perhaps 8 out of 10 people have done so. But it has become so normal that inaitwa kujitoa kwa ngori. It is no longer corruption. It is no longer a vice. You know, it has become that bad.
So, and I think, okay, Wakili, whilst we are pinpointing and specifically focusing on the administration and the governance part, you also cite societal problem that needs to change.
Yes, and I think Eric Wainaina did a wonderful song, but I think in his next project he should really apologize to Kenyans we are not inchi ya kitu kidogo. Si, hii ni inchi ya vitu vinono. Because we have moved from the chai, 50 shillings. We are now dealing with big money. We are talking about billions of money lost just like that, some of which we cannot recover. I was looking at the report by ESCC talking about the amounts of monies we have recovered. It is good that some money has been recovered from corrupt dealings. But that is a drop in the ocean compared to the billions of money that we lose every year. So we really have a long way to go. You'd hear, our political leaders talk about the fight against corruption and how it is picking up speed and how institutions are doing what not. And some of these institutions will give their reports and their data. But that does not reflect the reality on the ground. Kenyans are very corrupt. We are very corrupt as a country. It is not just politicians, it's not just a few individuals, it is now a systemic problem.
Okay, now, Cyrus, a lot to talk about, especially as we come down on the Jubilee administration between 2013 and 2017 and how it had managed the country's financial coffers. But looking at what's happening and the world celebrating this important day, do you think that we can uplift ourselves from these depths of despair to the great heights of hope?
I'm glad to be with you this morning after being away for a very long time.
And you were at home?
I was at home.
Hopeful for the BBI signature collection?
Or for other things. Now, as my friends have just alluded, corruption actually is not the way the World Bank views it. It's not the way media views it, that it's only on the political elite alone. Corruption right now is at the grassroots. And when we talk of the grassroots, we talk of that common mwananchi who now decides, because now corruption has become a norm of the day, that I have to buy whatever. If it is freedom, I have to buy freedom. I don't want to look into the Constitution and argue my case out. When I'm found doing a wrong thing by the police officer, I'll buy my freedom out. I don't want to defend myself using the Constitution the way it is described in the Constitution. Now I'll decide, let me give out something small for me to be out. When I'm found out, for example, without a mask, for example, right now is something of the day. I'll think of how much am I going to give the police officer so that he can release me, he or she can release me, unlike abiding to the Constitution. So we tend not to follow the law, but to buy the freedom. Now we abuse our own Constitution, we abuse our own rights, and we accept to carry out corruption as our daily basis. Now, when I look at fighting corruption from the head of state level, I've always said, and I never shy off from saying it, Uhuru is a good talker, is a good PR person who will come give you a good speech, very lucrative, but when it comes to implementing what he has said in the speech, he'll never do it.
Okay, but
he'll go sit down and just observe how things are being done, then he'll be quiet. We've done. We've had Mbarak,
Twalib
Mbarak,
the SEC chief executive.
He came in with a lot of swag. The Kamata Friday, people are being arrested of corruption. We've seen many people have been arrested of corruption with the Kamata Friday. But no one has been convicted. People have right now. Governor Lenol Kulal is on suspension. He cannot access the office.
Yes.
Just because he was committed and charges pressed on him, but nothing is going on. So is that a way of fighting corruption? Or but is a way of intimidating Kenyans?
But it's very important that you're mentioning that. Therefore, we are talking about the modus operandi of the criminal justice system, more or less, before these cases are presented in a court of law. It's the DPP, the DCI, and the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Therefore, all that you've mentioned, the DPP is, of course, bravado, the zest that he came in with, the ESCC, as you have mentioned, and the Director of Criminal Investigations, is what they are doing in terms of the media prosecution of these cases, laying bare their tactics and therefore giving the suspects more wiggle room to come up with good representation in terms of their lawyers and also come up with other tactics so that they can prove themselves as innocent.
In fact, and Marenda and Philip will agree with me, when that thing goes public, lawyers are always out there waiting to be called. Not each lawyer, but the smartest lawyers in the city are always there, ready to be called so that they can go and represent, okay, the perceived the perceived criminals, okay? Because because one, somebody is charged with 58 billion, or let me say 580 million corruption case, okay? A smart lawyer, a smart city lawyer, okay? Not just lawyers, but smart city lawyer is ready to go and hear this case out and argue for a bail, okay? This person will be out. Okay? Now, when this person is out, the case is weakened. You never hear about ESCC, you never hear about DPP, you never hear about court proceeding. But remember, when this person was being arrested, it was like a breaking news, now which will come and shed off.
Which is not important because
it is never important.
We want convictions out of these cases, isn't it?
Another thing
so do you think within the time frame that the president has set, he has to leave office by 2022? And he said that two issues remain paramount, important and pivotal in the next 2 years for his administration. Living this country in peace, meaning that Kenya should be peaceful, and also fighting corruption. Do you think that is attainable?
You see, it is not attainable. With regards to how I've always viewed the president is a good talker, as I've always said, and I'll keep on saying that.
Okay.
So he never attained that thing of corruption.
Okay.
He'll never attain it because it is his administration. Actually, that the corrupt people are in his administration.
Okay, I get it.
Billions and millions of money are getting lost in his administration. We have KEMSA. It has issues, okay, based on corruption.
Okay.
Okay, but under his watch. Now, another thing is that when we talk of the corruption on the governors and other leaders, I've always said this. The Constitution is very clear. It is our mandate, okay? We as the citizens, we as the voters, let us call upon our leaders onto accountability.
Okay.
The monies that are sent to our counties, the monies that are given to the members of parliament as CDF, these are our monies that we should always follow to the latter what this money has done.
Okay.
Let us hold our leaders accountable of each and every penny they are given.
Okay.
So let us start. Let us be our own police.
Okay.
Let us be our own police.
Public policing.
Public policing.
Okay.
To our own leaders. And when we start this at the grassroots level, okay, where even that MC, now we are talking, when we talk of BBI, the BBI is talking about giving MCAs what we call World Development Fund.
5%.
If we fail to manage CDF, how will we manage this World Development Fund?
Okay, we'll come to that because there is the BBI topic later on in the broadcast. Victor, then talking about now where these cases will end up, that is the criminal justice system, the courts of law. But in 2019, the Chief Justice David Maraga, who is about to leave office now, after his tenure is set to expire, said that some of these cases which are brought to us by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the DCA and the DPP are hawkish. They are incomplete. The cases cannot be proven beyond reasonable doubts. So will this breakup in the criminal justice system further lengthen the time that might be taken by the president and Kenya to have successful convictions out of multi-billion corruption cases?
The cases are weak because the fight against corruption is cosmetic and political. You know, if you do your investigations properly, if forensic audits are done properly, I doubt if the director of public prosecution would present a case in court that is not watertight. But what we see is that I disagree with Philip today, and Philip is a governor, and because I hate him, and Mumbi Ngugi, her Lady Justice,
yes,
had already declared that when I take you to court and you take plea, then you must vacate office until the case is completed. Now I know the next day, Philip would not be a governor and I would have a sail-through in whatever I want in his area of jurisdiction. Then I simply do that. Then whether I cannot prove my case or not is a case for another day. And the case can go for as long as we wish. Now, that is part of the problem. Are we honest enough to present cases that are genuine, cases that matter, cases that are realistic? We ain't. And this goes to the very tenets of the society that Philip was talking about. When I was growing up and when I went to school, there was a subject called SEE, Social Ethics Education. Now, we were taught on how you need to behave. When you pick money, what do? Do you buy a mandazi, or do you take it to the teacher on duty, or you take it home? And we had to answer that. Now, in the change of the curriculum, it was merged to GHCRE. Then it was put as question maybe number 86 to 90 in the CRE part. And it was only left for another 5 questions. Now, after I left school, now I hear there is something called social studies. I don't know whether they still offer the ethics part of that social studies. Because if you were to teach social studies properly, then you also have to teach the kid from the word go how he needs to conduct himself.
So it should be an inculcated values.
It's a character that we need to learn.
And we need to include that in our syllabus.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, that is the first problem that we are suffering. The second problem we are suffering in this country in terms of corruption is budgeted corruption. You know, when we write our budget and we think about contractors and we think about kickbacks, it means we are already budgeting for corruption in our budget. Then we go borrowing with the mind of a kickback. We go borrowing with the mind that this money must go into a few people's pockets. Then that is corruption. Look at the case of the SGR. Look at the Chicken Gate scandal.
NYS.
Now, NYS. And when you look at our independent commissions and independent agencies in this country, we've not failed to have corruption at the IEBC. We've always had it. We've had corruption at the judiciary. We have judges who have been corrupted. We have cases with the being handled with the JSC currently in corruption cases of judges and a few lawyers. Now, look at the executive. Are we short of ministers who are involved in corruption cases? We aren't.
Of course, 6 were paraded in courts of law in the president's first-term administration.
Now, look at our parliament.
Okay.
A parliament that consists of members who can be bribed to an extent of even 5,000 shillings. Now, that is the problem, Ayub. When each and every facet of the economy thinks about enriching themselves, then the country is in a problem.
Okay.
So, what needs to be done? Strengthen the institutions, but allow competence to be at the top. Now, we agree that the judiciary must be funded and must be funded fully to ensure that cases do not just stop at taking pleas. Let's have enough judges. And to that extent, the president should appoint the judges that he should appoint.
Okay.
He has failed to appoint them. How would you admit more senior counsels, but then they don't have judges to appear before?
Okay, and we have more than 17,000 cases only at the environment courts across the country.
Yet you don't want to appoint judges, and lawyers are graduating daily.
So in other words, the president is promising what I may term, in terms of his renewed fight against corruption, as the pig in the pork.
Hot air. Then on my last submission on this, are we obeying the Chapter 6 of the Constitution?
No. Integrity. Okay, I'll come to that.
You know, if we would not obey that chapter, then it means we give Kenyans the appetite to always elect corrupt people. How did we end up with Sonko in Nairobi?
Okay, or Governor Anne Waiguru.
How did we get Anne Waiguru into office? How did we have Waititu in office? Almost all the governors, 40 out of 47, you will find them having a dotted past in terms of work.
Okay. Wakili Philip.
Yes.
And if you were President Uhuru Kenyatta, and I pay you a visit at State House, let me say this, and it's in regard to your renewed war on graft. Between 1990 and 2010, Kenyan politicians and their accomplices have gobbled $3.6 billion from foreign money that got into the country in forms of loans and grants. That's about 360 billion Kenya shillings over 20 years. And the World Bank had titled the report as the elite capture of foreign aid. Mathematically, it means that 20 billion Kenya shillings, 18 billion Kenya shillings was stolen every year for 20 years, 1.5 billion every month, 50 million shillings every day, and 2 million shillings every hour. That is 10 years of Mwai Kibaki and 10 years of Daniel Toroitich arap Moi. Now we come to the ruling Jubilee Party. In 7 years, listen to this. The National Assembly report by the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources tabled in the House in October 2019. In the financial years 2016-17, 17-18, the National Treasury spent 120 billion to fund construction of 8 mega dams, Aror Kemore dams included. 120 billion disappearing in just 2 years. Mathematically, it means 60 billion every year, 5 billion every month, 1.7 billion every day, 70 million shillings disappearing every hour under the ruling Jubilee government. How, as a president, will you achieve the goal that you want to attain in the ending of corruption?
That is assuming that I am not part of the problem, because I
Yes.
believe that the president is also part of the problem.
So I presume in this case, if I were to present that question to you as the president of the Republic.
The war against corruption, amongst other things, needs a lot of political responsibility. And for an individual seated at the apex of political office in the country, the president, you need to take personal responsibility. One, you also need to ensure that the people who are under your direction and control are taking responsibility. You cannot be seated in a cabinet that has people who have been accused of corruption, and they are seated pretty, nothing is being done. They are not taking responsibility. In fact, they are still occupying office when investigations are going on. In countries that are developed, and I must insist, they are not developed, by the way, because they have good infrastructure, perfect technology. They have chartered a certain mindset that appears to have gone ahead. So I think that aspect of taking responsibility is missing, political responsibility. If a cabinet secretary has been accused, just even the whiff of being corrupt itself, they must step down until they are dismissed from those allegations. That is the first thing that will happen. Two, and this is the unfortunate bit that we find ourselves in. Politicians are most of the time funded by, business people, corporations, that after they get into office, they now start, paying back the monies that were resourced to them during the campaigns.
Okay.
So one of the things that we need to do is to really enforce our election laws as regards campaign financing, for example, because most of these people who get government tenders and profit from kickbacks, these are individuals who funded some politicians, and you cannot bite off the hand that feeds you. I think that is something that we have gotten in the crosshairs. If I may just attempt to diagnose the issues, because it's a cocktail of issues. You look at the chain, the reactionary chain, before you get to a successful conviction. One, you look at the police, shoddy investigations. That is because, one, of competence, something that we need to address. Two, because of resourcing. If you talk to people working with the DCI, they will tell you that they will do quite a bit if they were resourced properly. And especially when you're dealing with white-collar crimes, you need quite a lot of resource. Then after that, we've had a break, because ideally what should happen is the police are only supposed to investigate. It is the work of the DPP to institute criminal proceedings. But we've had instances where the police have investigated and then present suspects in court and then ask the DPP to rubber stamp charges or a charge sheet. That is what has been causing this kind of breakdown. Elsewhere, I'll give an example of the UK, for example. Before anyone is charged for corruption or whatever allegations, the police have to get the authority of the Crown Prosecutor, the equivalence of our DPP here. And he must approve that those charges meet the threshold of charging. The evidence that has been presented is substantial to obtain a conviction. Then they proceed to charge. The DPP has also been operating, in my view, with a political hand, as Victor has mentioned. Some individuals, even though they might be corrupt, but then the drive behind, their prosecution is political. You cannot achieve anything like that. You come to the courts, and the courts have also not been pragmatic in many instances. The courts have not been practical in many instances. I think that has also been an issue. And then there's also the bit of underfunding of the judiciary, because you can't handle these cases if you're underfunded, if you're under-resourced. And then there is the office of the media, the fourth estate. I think one of the challenges I'll pose to the media is we need to follow up these matters to their just conclusions. It's not just about an arrest and the arrest is in the media and the arraignment is in the media and then it goes cold, because the citizen might not have the resources that the media has.
So in other words, you have talked about a broken criminal justice system. And of course the financial aspects that come in terms of funding the third arm of the government, the judiciary here, which more or less carries out what I may term as a devolved function for they dispense justice across the country. And as we finish up on this, before we cross over and analyze the political pages of the papers, and Cyrus, to you, when you look at the cases that have been prosecuted by the DPP vis-a-vis in terms of the multi-billion shillings scandals and other cases that many Kenyans might term as the low-hanging fruits. I mean, he has attained more, isn't it, especially in terms of following up with these small cases, but there seems to be the inability, or what appears to be not having the oomph, as is the case on the other end of the criminal justice system, largely following up on multi-billion shillings scandals.
As it has been said by the first person who started speaking, that was Marende, corruption in this country has been politicized. Then he had it by saying that we budget for corruption. And when you look at the two things, it answers the question that you've asked me. When I go into corruption, I know very well I have a cut for that DPP's office. I have a cut for judiciary too, okay? So that this case can drag itself. So this case cannot find me in the wrong side of the law, but rather I'll find, one, lenient justice, and number two, the police or the DPP's office will not have so much time going and digging deeper into this case because of the money I have already looted. It is enough to sustain me and the institutions that are investigating me, and the institution, the judiciary system itself. And this issue comes in because of underfunding of the institutions. When the judiciary is underfunded, what do you expect when somebody has looted billions of shillings and is taken to that court? Okay? When the DPP's office is underfunded, okay? This is also another case. That's number one. Number two, when we get incompetent persons because of the political alignment, appointment thing in the office, do we expect to get better results? No. Okay? We shall always keep on crying and crying. And I also give a question to the World Bank and these other institutions, the International Monetary Fund. When the media comes out to cry that we had Eurobond.
Yes.
Come 2013 to 2017, we had the issue of Eurobond. The SGR saga, the NYS saga, these things were live all over. Even when you go to the Kenyan blogs, they were live. Now, when IMF sits down and gives us a loan, it's a pity. Okay? When France comes and gives us a loan, it's a pity.
But this time around, they say that we are worried about your political stability. We are unlikely going to give you some money when the president and his delegation went to France and met President Emmanuel Macron.
How many times have we been told that way?
Okay,
but later we are given money.
Okay, let me again, you've raised a very important point. And, may I follow up kindly on this? And you said, and you talked about the, as Philip did, the funding of the judiciary.
Yes.
I just want us to talk about the two stark contrasts of the President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is the one person here. He says he wants to fight corruption. His government has slashed the judicial funding by billions of shillings. Yet he wants these institutions to work together and reach successful convictions. I mean, how is this attainable?
And I said it earlier on, it is not attainable.
That is the irony of life.
And you see, and I've always said, Uhuru is a good talker, a good PR person. When you come and weaken the institutions, and we expect the institutions to yield results, then we're just but playing the minds of Kenyans. Because, one, the people who are stealing from this country, the bigger chunks of money that's supposed to go to Mwananchi, are the same people in government. And they have a share also with the executive where the president belongs. They have a share with the parliament which is supposed to legislate and come up with the laws that should ensure we have good laws on, let me say, on corruption and management of public resources, which we don't see. We have incompetent members of parliament who cannot sit down and also examine and come up with good reports on how, let me say, like the ones who went to KEMSA the other day.
Yes.
They go there, one, they have a per diem. Okay, that day is already counted.
Okay.
Money,
that is the allowance.
That's an allowance as well.
Okay.
Mileage, the car mileage is going to be counted. Okay.
Salary.
The salary is going. You see, they are doing that for them to get all these things.
So
but they are not doing it for the benefit of the common Mwananchi.
Okay, Cyrus, you are talking about a clogged up political system.
Yes.
An administration problem that appears to be not only dogging this country, but also apparently affecting the war on graft. Very
true. And you see, that's where I come and also to some extent support the clarion call on whereby we say or we suggest, few members suggest that Senate should be an upper house where laws, legislation are made, okay, and stamped and become a law. Because when we have few members who are reasonable, they will come up with a very, let me say, we shall have good results. Unlike when you have a huge house of, let me say, 400 members, whereby out of 400 members, 20 members speak and discuss things. But when it comes to passing such a bills, the 400 members are not there. So it becomes a problem to this country. So legislation should be looked into.
Okay.
And when we talk about change of the, amending our constitution, let this be talk of the day. First of all, let us start with the legislation. Okay? How are members of parliament going to be? Because we are going to increase the house from
to about more than 500.
Yes,
but the DP William Ruto appears to be also not realistic in wanting a downsized parliament from 650 to 500 plus.
It is not
which
realistic.
Still is bloated parliament.
It is.
Owing to the in terms of the members of parliament ratio to the people.
And you see, that is the biggest challenge we have.
Yet parliament, yet the legislature gobbles up about 50 billion Kenya shillings under these proposals.
Yes.
Okay, that is about funding 5 counties in the country.
And then another thing is...
let me go to Victor because we need to also save some time here. Victor, I just wanted... I've cited the report by the parliamentary committee and that indicated the numbers mathematics. Another one is here again because we keep records. The Israeli ambassador to Kenya, Noah Gendler, left Kenya. Not recalled by his parliament, not his government, but because he requested his government to recall him to Tel Aviv, because in his words, he had failed to add value to this country, Kenya, and therefore saw no reason of staying on after only 2 years on the job. And I quote him, he said, "In the history of Israel, no government-to-government development project has ever failed." I'm talking about the Galana Kulalo project, he said. It is the first ever to fail in the history of Israel. He continued to say, farmers in the maize-growing areas and their political representatives, maize millers who fought and eventually succeeded in getting maize milling component from the contract, they did not want the price of 2 kilo packet of maize to be sold between 60 to 70 shillings. He said it's because of corruption that he is leaving this country. We are denting our credentials, isn't it, internationally?
You know, that is the problem with budgeting for corruption. That is the main problem. This is the government that told us that a 2 kg packet of unga will not go past 90 shillings. It has never come below 90. It has even never come to that 90 shillings. Yet that was a campaign manifesto.
That was in 2017?
2013. Yes.
And even 2017?
In February of 2013, that is what we were told. Now, we were told about the doctors who will never strike. We were told about teachers who will never strike. We were told about the police who will be paid properly. But then instead of paying them because the money is there, the money has been pocketed by a few individuals. Now, on to the parliamentarians. We have parliamentarians who are not readers. They don't read these reports, I can tell you. They appear in parliament blank as the common mwananchi are. How would you explain when we moved from the 6 bearded sisters, for example, when we had the young Turks in parliament, when we had the likes of Martha Karua, who could read documents and explain them, when we had the likes of Grace Ogot, who could read and analyze documents. Then we have the current crop of MPs who heckle and do a lot of nonsense in parliament. You know, that is the problem. That is the major problem in this country. How would we elect members who do not concentrate on their jobs, but concentrate on theatrics? When did we relegate our members of parliament to taking photos with alcohol? It's not bad to drink. How did we get there? How did we get to the point where MPs are competing on how much they are going to get in terms of allowances, instead of how many bills they would present in parliament, how projects would not fail in their hands, and how they expedite on documents and reports brought before them? How many laws have been enacted by this current parliament? Now that must be the question.
Okay, so also, we have talked about the societal aspect, the administrative issue remains a big problem in this case as per your presentations. And you think, do you think that is the reason as to why the parliament at the county level, the county assemblies I'm talking about, and the national level, is that the reason as to why these two houses are held in public obliquity, in this case, doubt, deficiency in trust?
You know, when you elect people who are incompetent, when you elect people who have no self-conviction, when you elect people who have no interest in being in public office, then that becomes the problem. And to some extent, that's why I agree that we need to implement the chapters that insist on the academic credentials of members who need to be elected. You and me must agree that a birth certificate does not confer leadership skills into you.
Of course it doesn't.
But it doesn't.
Yes.
At the same time, your academic qualifications don't. But then what their academic qualifications do is that they give you the confidence and the ability to perform in that particular office when you are there.
Okay.
Then on my last point on what needs to be done.
Okay.
The BBI is recommending very good things in terms of how to fight corruption. Now, we are tagging a term on when a case can be presented in court and heard to completion. I think that is a good thing.
Like the presidential petitions.
Yes.
Okay.
For that reason, we need to support the document.
Okay.
We are saying that the judiciary must be given a budget that is reasonable. And then it must also, apart from not just being properly funded, it must also not be understaffed.
Okay.
That is important. And lastly, there is the introduction of the ombudsman into the judiciary.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Now, just to allow me say it,
okay.
It allows the smooth workings between the executive and the judiciary.
Okay.
We won't really want to see the repeat of what we are seeing between Maraga and the president.
Okay, and of course, the ombudsman is the office of the ombudsman is largely supported, but the process of appointing is what we will talk about. Yes, Wakili Philip.
Just lastly on these issues, I mentioned some time back that we have 3 categories of people in this country. One, people who believe that Kenya is magical, it's very beautiful, no issues, magical Kenya. The second category is the oblivious ones, people who are aloof. They don't care what happens, what goes on. And I think I speak for my friends here that we belong to the third category who are realists, and we identify the issues, and we understand that if we do not speak about these issues, the magical Kenya will disappear. And even those who are oblivious and aloof will not have that luxury in the future. So I think what I want to state to our fellow Kenyans is this. that if we do not change the trajectory we are on, then those of us who are in this age bracket will have nothing to hand over to our children because everything will be looted.
Okay.
These people who are looting now will not stop, and they are passing the looting culture even to their children because those who are in office, most of them are protecting the interests of their families that have acquired property legally over time.
Okay.
So we must change the trajectory we are on. We must decide that we need to change this country. If we don't, then this reports and data that we are having on anti-corruption will be a mirage. It will be something totally different.
Okay.
We will now be living in what former Chief Justice Mutunga will be fully living in what he mentioned as a bandit economy.
Okay.
We will all be bandits.
Okay, thank you so much. And Wakili Philip and Victor and Cyrus, let's now hit the break. When we come back, our attention will be on what's appearing on the front page of the Star newspaper. This is, of course, about the headline that the ODM party pushes for fresh amendments in regard to the content of the BBI report before the presentation of the more than 5 million signatures collected by the proponents to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, which paves way for the plebiscite in 2021. This as Uhuru Ruto allies are also discussing changes that are likely to be announced by Friday. And this includes, of course, some of the issues that the Ruto team wants to change, as the ODM party now says. The model on the 70 constituencies by the IEBC needs to be changed, as also the outlook of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission as they support the IPPG model. And all that will be up and on after the break here on the broadcast. Good afternoon, welcome back to the broadcast. You're watching New Day Kenya into the final segment, still with Victor, Philip and Cyrus on set, and we now turn our attention on the political pages of the publication. And in this case, I just want us to run through page 4 and 5 of the Star newspaper that highlights the ODM party push for fresh amendments of the BBI content, and this is music to DP William Ruto's allies. The Odinga side says the publication of the bill was hushed hours before the launch at the KICC of the signature collection by President Uhuru Kenyatta and the ODM party leader Raila Odinga about 3 weeks ago, and on some of the agreed proposals. This as they want the formula changed on the addition of the 70 constituencies by the Independent Electoral and the Boundaries Commission, IEBC, and they also want the adoption of the IPPG model, which was reversed following the concerns that were raised by the Deputy President William Ruto, the Bomas of Kenya, during the launch of BBI2 after the report was handed over to President Uhuru Kenyatta and the ODM party leader Raila Odinga on the 21st of October 2020 at the State Lodge in the county of Kisii, a day after leading the country in the celebrations of the Mashujaa Day. Victor, to you, it seems that it isn't over, despite some proponents of the report, including ODM members, saying that the door is shut and there can be an opportunity, an opening for minor, few amendments as we head to 2021.
You know, I would really wish to comment on this thing, but then the source worries me.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in that story is anonymous.
Okay.
When we spoke to an anonymous source, when we spoke to someone who didn't want his name to be disclosed, and they are not positions of the ODM party.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the ODM party has not proclaimed itself on this issue, and to the effect that the party has amendments that they feel must be done before the presentation of the signatures to the IEBC. In fact, in the last public appearance of the party leader concerning this issue, the ODM leader declared at the BBI secretariat offices that he would wish the signatures to be presented to the IEBC in record time so that IEBC would get to do the job very fast. Mm-hmm. But then, a week or two later, we are getting papers reporting how ODM has amendments to the document. From where I sit, from where I stand, the party has not proclaimed itself on this case.
Of course, yes, it either communicates through the chairperson, John Buddy,
or the
Secretary Edwin Sifuna, and that is a true statement. But the point is that I'm sure you're privy to the meeting between the President and the DP William Ruto allies, in this case, to perhaps iron out the differences for a possible DP Ruto support of the course by the President and your party leader, the ODM party leader. Do you think there will be a breakthrough in regards to some of these issues that might be addressed that the DP William Ruto has raised?
Now, I would say what my party leader says everywhere, that for a referendum to exist, there must be those who support and those who oppose.
That's automatic in democracy.
Yes, that is what democracy dictates. Now, there has never occurred anywhere in the world where a referendum is done on the basis of consensus. Then it means we are not going for a referendum. We are basically just agreeing on a few things we are supposed to do and do them. But when we trigger the clauses that allow us to do a referendum, then it is only prudent to allow Kenyans to make the choices. It starts with the people, and it must end with the people. It must not end with politicians.
Okay.
But the current scenario we are seeing with the deputy president is, from one end of his mouth, he's talking as if politicians want to be in charge of the document, and he speaks on behalf of hustlers. But from the other end of his mouth, he wants to come to the table and make it a big boys discussion, and that he must be on the table, he must be listened to. Constitutionally, the role of the deputy president is very limited, to assist the president in doing and discharging his roles.
He is the principal assistant.
Exactly.
Yes,
now, the president has declared that it is in his interest to support the document so that he leaves a united Kenya for the posterity.
Okay, we talked about him wanting to end corruption, that we said is far-fetched.
Now, I'm talking about
can he achieve,
uniting Kenya.
Can he achieve the
for
other
the
bit
posterity
now, which was to unite the country? Can he leave behind a united country when we already have a fallout in his political party, and there seems to be friction elsewhere in terms of the political situation in the country? Even the government of France, when the president led a delegation to the French capital, Paris, and met President Emmanuel Macron, the French delegation said, we cannot assure our investments because politically you are unstable. You can't guarantee us a 30-year grace period for Kenya to be politically stable. They were worried.
You're the people who define unity in the country as unity between the president and his deputy.
No,
that is wrong.
Not per se, but what about the French delegation or the French government, a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council with one of the most sophisticated intelligence agency, and has an influential say in terms of the global political order, saying that we cannot guarantee investments from French companies when you are politically unstable.
We were politically unstable, but then I would assure you that if we do what we must do as a country, if we commit to what we must commit to as a country, then this country would be politically stable into the future.
Wakili, a key member of the Ruto team that is apparently taking part in the talks is the Gatundu South Member of Parliament, Moses Kuria. He said, and I quote him, "The ball in their court now," he means the Secretariat. "We have submitted our issues during the meetings, and we hope to see these issues to be brought on board so we don't have to go into divisive referendum. I hope wisdom will prevail before Friday. We'll have no problem going per the current signature collected if we agree." The DP William Ruto appears to be decidedly vague on this matter. What do you think he wants to achieve in this case in seeking consensus? And how is consensus applicable in a democracy when we know automatically this process will be ending in a yes or no?
It is convenient for him to speak the way he's speaking, because if he comes out brazen and says, I do not support this thing fully, then he loses some political mileage. And if he goes to the other extreme again, he has something to lose. So it is convenient for him to be, shifty and sit on the fence as he is, as he has been in the last few weeks. But that is points to something that Victor has mentioned, that we are tying the legitimacy of constitutional making and laws to political palatability, such that if this kind of politician has said yes, then it means that we are good to go. If DP William Ruto today says he's supporting the BBI fully, that is not to mean that now that the people who are behind him were supporting him then should now support him. In fact, they should let him go walk it alone because he has made a personal decision. He, together with the people who walk around him. I have not seen him engage the people, across the country and collecting their views on what he should now tell what Moses Kuria is saying, the task force.
Okay.
So this will be his personal decision, he together with his cronies. It is not about his support base. But again, we must be alive to the realities of the day that people will, blindly follow. The other bit that I also find unfortunate is that we seem not to be sure or certain when we have closed that process, because it seems that the bill is still morphing and there are changes that are going to be made. And I must mention that if changes are made to the bill, at least substantive changes that DP William Ruto is talking about, then that means that you will need to collect new signatures.
Okay.
A whole process that again will, because I don't know how much money has been used in this signature collection exercise, but I am aware it is quite a huge sum. You will need to spend another set of resources to collect
which
new,
might be impractical as per the proponents.
Yes.
So in the event these demands he is pushing are not met, what option do you think will be left for him to pursue?
If they are not met, then he has to stand and oppose the referendum,
Okay.
and oppose those proposals.
Okay.
But again, I don't see him doing that because he stands to lose a lot if he goes the no side,
Okay.
goes to the extreme.
Cyrus,
Yeah.
what will be the political cost of the Deputy President William Ruto doing as he did in 2010?
Ruto, from where I see it, I believe is trying to galvanize his support from whichever side. Bearing in mind he is leading a camp that I can say they are undecided to one point. Because when you hear the lieutenants talk about this, they are like against. People like Gladys Sholei have been very much against the BBI thing. I've not even tried to submit anything that they think should be in the amendment. But they come out gun blazing, opposing it, saying all manners of things that will not add value at the end of the day. But now when he comes out and speaks this way, the other time, I think it was last week, he had a presser. And
A day like this on Wednesday.
Yes, he said, this is how I want it, this is what we need, this is what we need, this is what we need. You see, that is like you are opposing the document, okay? And by opposing the document, this is your stand. Now, then later he comes and say, I'm supporting you become like you are a confused fella. You don't know what you're fighting for.
So what do you think he wants to attain in all this process? Saying his demands are not met or they are met. Why do you think it's lengthening his decision on which side he will be belonging to at some point?
The deputy president is between a hard stuff, or let me say, is between
A rock and a hard place.
It's between two things, that I want to be here and I want to be here. He wants to please the president, then he wants to make his stand. These are two different things that is making him become like he's confused. As per the constitution, okay, the way it is there to assist the president in one or the other. So he wakes up and says, I want to assist the president in this. But now he remembers, I need also to make my stand in this. So when he stands to make his stand, you see him. When he stands to come and say, I want to help the president, he comes now out like he's a confused fella. So what he needs to do is to chant his way forward, whether it's to be on the no side or on the yes side.
Okay.
And as democracy has it, constitution amendment or referendum is, we can never go, it can never be a consensus when you talk about referendum. Then that is what you call, we have just sat down and agreed this is how we need to work.
Okay,
but for a referendum, it's either yes or no.
That is
the how a referendum is made.
That is how it culminates in the end.
You know what the deputy president is trying to ground himself to oppose the document, but he doesn't know how to do it. But then politically, he's doing the right thing. Seek valid reasons to oppose the document. So tell your supporters that this is what I want amended in the document. Then when those things are not met in the document, then come out in public and tell your supporters, I presented my views in the document to the committee. This is what I thought should have been right, but they thought otherwise. Now that document cannot be good for us. That is why, and that is what he did at the presser.
And you see,
Then, coming to the weekend, he was at the burial of Matungu, former Matungu
Yes.
member of parliament. When Malala put him to task to say whether he was opposing or not, he said that that does not matter to him, whether he opposes or supports the document. If need be, he might just even decide to fence it and be at the back and see what happens. So he is trying to lay ground to oppose the document. And from a political eye, that is what we must monitor. That he wants to oppose the document, he is laying grounds to oppose the document, but we are also prepared to tackle him on that same ground.
Okay, Philip.
Yes, I think it should not really bother us on whether this politician supports this or not, or whether they are opposed to the proposals. But you mentioned something very critical, that we might get into a divisive referendum. And for us, that would be very problematic, given that we volatilize such simple issues as the law. I'm saying simple issues because these are things that we ideally should agree on, because this is a path that we are charting as a country. If we head the way that we know our politicians are historically inclined to, then we would have a divisive referendum that will not be about the issues that are being proposed, that will be about these political factions. And to an extent, I agree, it will serve us best if these politicians agree on what they want. Let this thing come to the citizens, and we can then show them that we either agree with what you had laid on the table and agreed upon, or we do not agree. So it serves the country better if these politicians actually sit together on a table, at least in these circumstances, when we're heading to a referendum, and then thereafter we'll have an election. So if they agree, well and good. Let them bring that proposal to a referendum, and the citizens can then decide.
Okay, but as you mentioned divisive, before I come to Cyrus, the concern that comes to my mind is that the 2005 outcome, or when Kenyans rejected the Wako draft, that was after it watered down the Boma's proposals that were made by Kenyans, which was one of the most participatory. Then in the event we have the DP William Ruto leading the No campaign, do you think the handshake, in this case, the political unity between the president and the ODM party leader, Raila Odinga, can stave off a contested referendum, which might end up in violence in 2022?
It might minimize casualties in terms of political casualties and the kind of violence that we could have. It could minimize, because I think the handshake provided us with a sense of calm. I have said this severally. It was not peace, it was calm. And the calm was for us to sit down and reasonably engage towards forging a peaceful direction. So yes, the handshake could provide that kind of environment where you have minimized violent engagements. But again, we must still insist that in as much as these are political realities, we must always speak out to these politicians, so that peradventure they listen to what we are saying, we would have saved ourselves a lot of trouble.
Okay, and that is what we don't want to happen in the country. Cyrus, I'll come to you on this. And of course, we are looking at the philosophical aspects of what can be the real reality on the ground when it comes to the way forward, because the path is now paved for the 2021 referendum. How will the meteoric rise of the DP William Ruto, ever since 2007 elections when he was an ODM party member, be measured against the political zenith status attained by the president and the ODM party leader, who together will command, of course, a large following? Who in this case do you think between the two will carry the day? And for the DP William Ruto, what does it portend for the gains that he has made in, for instance, and to be specific, Central Kenya region, which is the president's backyard?
When you look at it in that angle, then you realize that the DP is trying to balance actually the central, because the central people are trying to align themselves with the BBI. a number of them. Now, when you look at the Rift Valley block, where he commands a base, it seems like a very few section opposes him on what he says, but majority are with him. So what he's trying to do is, to first of all, put himself in an angle where he will be comfortable. After putting himself in an angle, then, and when we are yet to get to that referendum day, yeah, okay, or date, he will now align himself to a position, okay, which will come either favor him or not favor him come 2021. And this to him will still remain a plus, whether he's going to lose or not lose. He still remain relevant, and that will be his stand. And another thing is that when I look at the BBI at the moment, this quagmire that is there at the moment is actually based on the Mwananchi.
Okay.
Because when I look at, I've been at home, and I was not only in my area, let me say Bungoma, I stretched to Viga and other areas. When I've been there, when you meet people, let me say 1 out of 10 people, you get 2 or 3 are in support of the BBI, but the rest 7 are like, we don't need that thing, okay? Because they are looking at it. There's nothing good that we are going to achieve from this. There's nothing.
Are there specific issues that they have pointed out that are not good, for instance?
People are pointing out the issue of, let me look at the constraint that we have at the moment. People are looking at, when you talk of Chapter 6, it has not been attained. When you talk of, let me say, distribution of resources, it has not been attained. When you talk of health issues, in the last constitution, it has not been attained.
Okay.
When you talk of independence of institutions, it has not been attained. Now, tell me, how are we going to attain this by this document that we term as BBI? So it becomes a challenge, okay? And these are some of the things that I look at. Come 2022, yes, the system may say we support the document fully, okay? But now the common Mwananchi, who now goes and votes, may decide to vote other way. That is what is there on the ground. And that's a fact thing that also the government needs to look in. The government now needs to listen to the common Mwananchi more than the political leaders. And that's how we shall now exercise our democracy in the better way.
Okay.
My
I get
last
your point,
please.
Briefly.
I think Cyrus is working a lot with elites. Cyrus, work with the common man. You will realize the thoughts of the common man on the document. They have different thoughts to what you are presenting.
I think it's your definition
Depends,
of common Mwananchi that
No, but I think he's working a lot
because
with the
the Deputy President, William Ruto, says that Kenyans are not illiterate. They can take part in multi-question referendum. The former Prime Minister said because of illiteracy, Kenyans might be confused. So in 2020, that is about 57 years since independence, the Republic of Kenya in contemporary society still hasn't finished up on ignorance.
Then,
Yeah.
now,
And we are banking on the same people.
Apart from talking about the elites that Cyrus is working with, now this story seems to have been sponsored by a Ruto camp to tell the central voter that ODM is opposing the number of constituencies you are getting, and they're worried about the procedure and all that, as opposed to what has always been presented, that it is the Ruto camp who are saying we don't support the document, and then in turn it might interfere with the support politically in the region. On to whether we must have a multiple question referendum or not. I believe Philip will tell you that Kenyans always vote on a bill, and it is a yes for the bill or a no for the bill. So I doubt if we would have a bill like this and then present questions as if we are answering CRE questions in primary school in a referendum. It is not constitutional.
Okay, so let's get to for more as we finish up. Charles, I'm sure I have some questions. So let me have the cartoon edition of the Daily Nation. Here's what's coming up. And it's all about what's happening in the political room. The second locust wave, which is likely to threaten our food security in the country. The president apparently is more focused on the signature collection. The Deputy President, William Ruto, the hustler narrative and the movement that he has created. And for the ODM party leader, what's important and of significance to him as per the cartoon edition is the Building Bridges initiative. And all these are transpiring at a time, Philip, I'm coming to you on this, when we in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, and doctors are decrying lack of essentials, PPEs, better pay, proper working environment, and the government neglect who they accuse of keep sticking their fingers into the ear. Does the cartoon capture the right status of affairs in the country at the moment?
Exactly. I think it's spot on. You know, the locusts did not come this year. It's not like they accompanied corona into the country. The locusts began last year, way back. And I think if we were serious, after Kiunjuri left, the next person who should have left that ministry was Munya.
Who told us that the locusts are aging.
Yeah, so we didn't know to worry. Then he comes back, and in fact he told us they will disappear on their own after 6 months.
Then
he comes back and tells us...
That's unscientific, isn't it?
I mean, you know, you think about the things that happen in this country and it just gets you mad. Because the people who are charged with such responsibility have no clue. And if we were in a working country, such people should have resigned out of their own conscience. But these are people whose conscience is seared with hot iron. They cannot think beyond the perks they are getting out of these offices. We're talking about doctors. And I've had, you know, a section of Kenyans saying doctors should not consider themselves special. You know, every other career and profession is suffering almost the same thing. But doctors did not begin complaining today. They have been complaining. A few years ago, I helped a few colleagues of mine review the CBA that they had signed with the ministry. And it was bogus. They were shortchanged. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the things they had agreed in that CBA were not implemented. So doctors are not just crying today because of COVID. They have been crying all along. And it is because they deal with quite a lot. And when you're talking about the pandemic, yes, doctors are dying elsewhere because of COVID, mm-hmm. because they have been exposed. But those that are dying elsewhere have not been knowingly exposed to risk. And that is the point we should really stress to this government. That when you have the opportunity, when you have the resources to protect those that you have charged with the responsibility of protecting the lives of Kenyans, then you must live up to that responsibility. The government today cannot tell us how many PPEs in terms of gowns, masks, and gloves and all those things are used per day. How many are in store? How many are projected, you know, to be procured? Mm-hmm. The government does not have this data. We are just consuming, you know, the numbers. This so-and-so in the last 24 hours, so-and-so in the last, you know, this period, without focusing on the real issues. And I sympathize with the doctors. Their plight is real. Okay. Because I have friends who are doctors, and they will tell you the amount of work they do, especially in the public hospitals. These people really stretch themselves out. Okay. And a government that does not listen, a government that does not resource its people, okay. and a government that really does not care about the plight of Kenyans. Okay. And just lastly on this point, okay. I have seen arguments about, you know, comparisons between professions. And it is just that some professions do not have the voice. Look at the police, for example. Our soldiers have died in Somalia. Our soldiers have been dying here in Lamu. Our police officers have been dying because of substandard equipment, because they are not resourced enough. It is just that they cannot come out and picket. They cannot strike. But if they had the opportunity to do that, okay. then we would be in trouble. So we must take this opportunity using what the doctors are raising. Let us look at all our sectors.
The civil service.
Yes, what is the government doing? And okay. where is our money going?
Thank you so much, Cyrus. And Victor, let me give you one minute.
Yes. To me, I'll just say this. Right now, there are doctors striking. Tomorrow, January, the schools are opening, the teachers are going on strike. That's a point to note. Let's not forget that. So when you weaken institutions, then you don't expect to have good governance. The COVID reports, the government has not taken it seriously the way it's supposed to take seriously. The governors, when they meet, they think of lockdown, they think of cessation. That's what they think, without telling us how they are putting mechanisms in place to manage the disease. When leaders stand to speak about the doctor strike, mm-hmm. they tell them, let us just understand the situation at the moment. And yet, we are pushing for our own political rights. Now, what we need to have in place is strengthen our institutions. Mm-hmm. Parliamentarians, what we need to do is through our political parties. Let now political parties now get charge in charge of getting good leaders in place.
Okay.
And then we shall have good representation in the parliament. Because most people vote on parties. They don't vote an individual, vote because of a party. My party has decided to get this one in place, so I'm going to vote so-and-so. So let parties participate in giving Kenyans good leaders who will be able to ensure legislation are in place. Because whatever we are facing right now, look at the locust thing, look at the pandemic that we have right now, is because of poor legislation, poor representation. And when we have that well achieved, then we are good to go.
Okay, thank you. And Victor, your final word, please.
Now, I would request that, as I've always said, let us not neglect our public infrastructure. It all rolls down to management of public infrastructure in this country. And that stretches to all the sectors. Now, how would you explain a government that cannot produce the data of all those who've been tested with COVID, to the extent that we have our government officials traveling to Dubai with fake COVID certificates? Yet, in my own thinking, if this government was as digital as it is, then by the presentation of your national ID, they should be knowing whether you've conducted a COVID test or not. Because we've always been told that it's centralized and that no hospital can declare a patient positive or negative without the data going to the central data management. Then if we do that as a country, we will be good. On the 30 seconds that are remaining, I believe Philip has not heard our last word. Okay. I will donate so that he can comment if he so wishes on the voting.
And I had given him time. Philip had talked about that. Thank you so much.
It is okay. It is fine.
Thank you so much, Victor. Your time is appreciated. I thank you so much for coming alongside Wakili Philip Mwangale. Thank you so much. And Cyrus Litswa, socio-economic and political commentator. And thank you to you too for watching the broadcast. We'll see you tomorrow night on the Primetime News. Up next is the lunchtime news. Either Abdi, Kenneth, or /Winnie will be here. Bye for now.